Well, we start here. It's been nearly 3 months since the July unrest, and some businesses are still waiting on their claims to be paid by the South African Special Risk Insurance Association. Sasria says it has also paid over 5.8 billion rand in claims to date, but that there will be some operational and cash flow challenges along the way that will require an intervention from the National Treasury. Joining us to give more detail about these interventions from the government side in the rebuilding efforts is Sasria Executive for Stakeholder Management, Muzi Dladla. Thank you very much, Muzi, for joining us this evening. You released a statement with the National Treasury where you have acknowledged the concerns about the ability of the organization to honor claims. Give us an update on how far the process to cover all these claims is right now.
Okay, thank you, Polani. Well, I think where I need to start is the fact that we've had, obviously, these claims coming in, which we've already, in the document itself, admitted to saying that the claims, the total number of claims did exceed the total amount of assets that we held. And National Treasury, obviously, then came into the picture to give us the 3.9 capital injection, which was, I mean, from August already, we've been talking about that. So that is going through the special appropriation bill processes of National Treasury to bring the money in. But having said that, it doesn't mean that we actually have liquidity issues. The solvency position aside, liquidity, we do have enough cash and funds to be able to fund the claims up until the end of the financial period. So we've mentioned in the document to say that how we're going to be rolling out the payments between, obviously, the claims that are from 0 to 1 million rands, and the claims that are going from 1 million to 30, and the bigger claims as well, which are long tail, which will take a bit more time to do. So in respect of that, the claims will be honored. We've received now about 100% of all the claims that we were supposed to have received for the period of all the unrest that took place in July. So in that instance, everything that has been registered, and it will be honored throughout the period. We've then committed as well, in addition to that, that is why we did a joint statement with the National Treasury, because there have been some media reports talking about Sasria, going down, being bankrupt, and all of that. So you have to pay claims and still to be in a position in terms of the regulatory requirements to still be a going concern, still be able to trade, which is why obviously Treasury is giving us an additional funding so that we are able not only to cover the claims that we need to cover, but in addition to that, so that we are able to be future ready as well, to be more resilient for the future as well. So the additional amount that government has mentioned in the document is actually to cover that. So we are past the issue of solvency or no solvency. And I just had to cover the space of liquidity that we will be able to cover those claims, as we've mentioned in the document, up until the end of the year. And then the new information or the new funds that will be coming in the new year will obviously then to set us up for the future.
Muzi, the question of solvency is well, received, and when it comes to what you've said in the statement as well, that you have reinsurers that you work with and other partners. Talk to us about the breakdown. How many of these, businesses have actually claimed where you have paid this 5.8 billion rand to?
Let me give you a perspective first as to the normal average claims that we would pay, on an annual basis. We would pay in the region of between 1,500 to about 3,000 claims on an annual basis. And that is not on one single event. So it's looking at throughout the entire year. So this particular event, from just July, we have claims that are in excess of about 12,000 that we're dealing with. So, I mean, that just gives you the magnitude of the amount of claims that we're dealing with in that respect. So up to this point, as we mentioned in that document, we wanted to cover the claims, the small claims up to 1 million rands. So we've done that, and I think we had mentioned that we would have those done until the end of September. So now we're in the process of settling. I think we'll go up to about 80% of all the claims that are up to 30 million. And the claims that are above that, obviously long tail. So we've had agreements with the loss adjusters and with the big businesses. And we're talking about, the big multinationals. So it's not a case of you just pay out. It's a case of rebuilding. So instead of doing cash in lieu and giving them money, we've agreed that we're going to rebuild together with them. So that's why it's going to be a bit of a more long-tail process that you're going to be doing. So we're not just going to pay out, we're going to be paying out in interim payments so that they're able to move on, in terms of stock that is required and in terms of rebuilding of the buildings that have been torched to the ground.
Muzi, what's the logic behind not paying cash to rebuild the buildings that were impacted, but not actually pay cash in lieu, but rather rebuild, help the businesses themselves rebuild?
We've reached an agreement not only with the businesses themselves, but I think economically it makes sense for us to do that, because some businesses might be tempted to take the cash and just move away. So for the market to be stimulated, because we do need a development of the markets, we do need stimulation of growth. So for us to put the businesses back in the position that they were before, it means we are then contributing towards the rebuilding process, and we are bringing back the economy to the position that it was before. Whereas the chance of businesses deciding to completely close down if they have the cash is quite high, which is why even themselves have agreed to their decision that we will rebuild rather than just to pay cash in lieu.
So if I am a businessman who's affected and I want to sell my business after the rebuild, can I do that?
Of course, after the rebuild, you can do whatever you need to do, because the purpose of us coming in as an insurance company is to put you back in the position that you were prior to the event. So what you decide to do after the rebuild is really entirely to the business person. I think the biggest thing is for us not to create a scapegoat for people who had no intentions to do so prior and now see an opportunity to do so. So by all means, businesses will be allowed to do whatever they need to do, because it's actually private equity that they injected into those businesses.
Should we expect more money coming from National Treasury, since they are expected to make 3.9 billion rand available to Sasria in the coming months, since there is a special appropriation that has been passed in Parliament?
Yes, absolutely. The 3.9 billion, I mean, it comes from the previous minister as well. So that is aimed at coming within the current financial year. And that is to help with the liquidity, as well as to bring us obviously in a position where at least the assets that we have are beefed up to cover the liability, so that we don't run into liquidity issues. And then in the new financial year, which is what we say as well in the statement, is that Treasury is actually waiting on us at this point. In as much as we've received 100% of all the claims tally, the claim movement still goes up and down as well, because there's adjustment of claims. There are some business interruption claims that we still need to recalculate. So that movement is still up and down. So until we get to the position where we know exactly the exact figure, then that information will be passed to Treasury, which we expect to be, I would say, within a month from now. And then in the 2022 budget, that's when Treasury will be coming in to bring in more funding into Sasria, which is not necessarily just to bring us to a position where we can cover the liabilities. But as I said, it is to put Sasria in a position, first of all, that we are able to meet the solvency capital requirements. We remain a going concern, and at the same time, we become more resilient for the future, because the way that things are happening right now, there's a lot of uncertainty. And as a result, Sasria is supposed to be resilient enough to handle any eventuality that might potentially happen in the nearer future. So we're doing, as we mentioned there, we are restructuring our reinsurance programs. So we're looking at capital restructuring as well. So we're looking pretty much to protect the balance sheet as well as to protect our retention in a way that, should there be an eventuality, that we are still in a position that the entity in itself doesn't necessarily need to have another capital injection, and it can really be sustainable on its own moving forward. But there will be a lot we're talking about after this, because these are just the immediate initiatives that we're doing, but there's a lot that is still coming. Looking at business models, looking at alternative distribution models as well. More so because the entities that affected the most are the small to medium enterprises, which were not covered. So we're looking now to broaden the scope of Sasria in respect of that.
Muzi, before I let you go, since you have 100%, of those claim allocations already there, I'm sure you've tallied how much this is going to cost you as an organization. Since you've already paid 5.8 billion rands for now, you have tallied how much the entire cost will be eventually.
Yeah, we have a very calculated estimate, and I'm using the word estimate because I don't want to commit to a number, because as I said, because of the adjustment of claims, the number could slightly move up, could slightly move down. The range that you're working with is between 25 billion and the upper limit would be 30 billion. So we are in that range, really, and that is really the entire loss or quantum of claims that are related to Sasria.
Muzi Dladla, the Executive for Stakeholder Relations at the South African Risk and Insurance Association. Thank you very much for your time.